System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja, Lil Tanky Sumler. My friend, hello. How are you? How was your weekend?
Man, life continues tentatively. But in other news, fat meat, we found out fat meat, yeah, it's greasy.
Yeah, watch out for that cholesterol. You might have to
Fat
survive a
meat is
nuclear
greasy. Yeah.
apocalypse soon. So let's talk about a few things. You see the title here. We know that the Russians have deployed the first ICBM into a active combat zone. We are now seeing reports of Ukraine hitting Russia with these attackums, which is an ongoing story. I also see Israel has not, stopped doing what they do. 24 Palestinians have been killed in the last 24 hours. We're seeing Israeli strikes across Lebanon. U.S. is deploying missiles to the South Japanese islands and deployment in Fiji. It seems like everybody's getting ready here. Everybody's prepared. Are we just waiting for World War III to begin? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think the Palestinians think we're just waiting. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, right, even the way that we're able to frame it as Americans, because we're detached. I heard it earlier. We were watching something and someone described America as a unsinkable island. You know what I'm saying? We're on this island where violence, we could watch it on TV. You know, and if it's not real violence, we can make movies about violence and watch it on TV. But like, you know what I'm saying? You ask some boys in the Donbass as World War III started, you know what I'm saying? I think the answer is decidedly yes. Just because the violence doesn't touch America doesn't make it not that, right? What we're watching right now is all of the major players are moving their pieces, you know. As you the one update that we do have is there's been reports that maybe this new weapon, which the Russians call it's the Russian word for hazel because it looks like a hazelnut. You know what I'm saying? There are reports that though it is a MERV, it wasn't an ICBM, right? Because ICBM would be intercontinental, and this was
mid-level.
Right.
Essentially.
Right. So really, it's a paradigm shift, and I think that doesn't make it less scary. I think it makes it more scary, right? Because what it's saying, the theater is again not. It's like when Bibi Netanyahu speaks in English, right? He's not speaking to Arabs, and he's not speaking to Israelis. He's speaking to Americans. To have a missile that's a MERV, you know, that goes upper atmospheric and releases guidable hypersonic missiles, right? That's really a terrifying thing, but it's meant to threaten the audience is Europe. It's meant to remind, look, you can't, the thing that is fascinating and it's hard as Americans to think about is just how notorious the Americans are at abandoning their allies. And you always think it can never be you. It won't be you. They got me, right? That's what the people learned in Vietnam, the American installed. As soon as that war was over, those guys died fast. They couldn't wait to get on American planes and then come to America because they knew the Viet Cong was going to murder that ass. You guys were the infiltrators. You guys were the ones that worked with the Americans. You guys were essentially collaborators, right? Same thing happened in Afghanistan. As soon as the Americans left, I mean, famously, watching people jump on planes and plummet off to their death. This used to be the thing that happened with the Soviet Union, right? People saw the Soviet Union as an unreliable partner, right? Like, all of the Arab client states that bought Soviet technology, but it would always be the broken down or, third generation. Meanwhile, the Americans are giving the Israelis state of the art, cutting art stuff. So you end up with things like, the 6 Day War, where like you just get decimated, right? And you think, well, oh, Russia will come to our defense, and they never do, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis is famously the same thing. Cuba thought they had an ally in the Soviet Union, but when the push came to shove, the Soviets left them to hang. Because this is what the thing is. It wasn't that the Soviets were cowards. It was that at the end of the day, the Soviets always realized it's better not to start World War III, right? It's just better not to do it. It's like, this is what the Americans want. Like, are we going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, but now it's the Americans, right? Now it's the Americans that are abandoning everyone, you know? And this is what Europe doesn't understand. I mean, Victoria Nuland straight up said, fuck the EU a decade ago, before she was even the Assistant Secretary of State, right? But said it and was still able to rise to the rank of Secretary of State. She said a decade ago, fuck the EU, right? I'm not trying to demonetize this, what she said. Not that, but like,
I'm sure the algorithm will care about that.
Right. But the reality is that's what Europe doesn't understand, right? So we've had 2 more ATACMS strikes into, again, classic Russia. What is non-contested area Russia, right? No matter how you want to slice it, the Ukrainians invaded parts of Russia, right? We can say if you're gonna say the Russians invaded, Ukraine, then you also have to say, when you're looking at the Kursk experiment, which is failing terribly, the Ukrainians invaded Russia and now they're stuck there. And all of those troops that could be helping them in the front lines are pinned down. And every day they're losing a little bit more ground. They can't keep up this momentum because now you're in Russia. The pressure they're facing is way worse than anything that's going on in the Donbass or, unless you're in like Chasiv Yar or like one of them big super places, you know what I'm saying? And so they're trying to extract their troops, right? So they can reinforce their line because I've heard the numbers are horrible in Ukraine. Since the use of this MIRV, we're seeing stuff where like up to 70% of the people in the military are like, now it's time to have talks about, maybe surrendering, maybe ending this thing. People just laying down their guns and walking off the battlefield because they're terrified, because they saw something that was apocalyptical. And so when you see the Americans fire ATACMS into Russia, even after the use of that MIRV, even after, Russia's warning, that's just America being America. Because America's saying, well, you're not going to hit us. You might hit somewhere in Europe. We'll probably do something about that if you do that, but there's no way you're going to hit us. So,
and that's what it seems like is happening right now. They're just essentially saying, and you hear the rhetoric being constantly ramped up in places like France and Germany and the UK. Even whatever that guy we were listening to today, I wish we could pull it up. Maybe I'll find it and post it on Intercity Left on our Instagram, where he's just like, if Russia doesn't stop this war right now, what we've given them will look like peanuts, I say. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know what is left for them to give. And when this war started, the special military operation, I should say, starts, you hear so much of the rhetoric coming out of the Biden White House as, well, that's just the beginning. He's just starting there. And it really seems now like they knew what was going to happen then. They knew they were going to push this thing all the way into the edge to the point where Russia would have to attack places like Germany and France or possibly, simply because there's so much of the military infrastructure there. And we always joke about this, and the world jokes about this, and Europe is not really a continent. Like, it's not that big. Like, you think, what's the difference? But like, how far is Kyiv from Hamburg or something? Like, is it the same distance between like, a Uyghur province in Shanghai? I mean, is it the same
No.
distance from
No, it's not
Maine
even a
to
New York to Miami drive. You know what I'm saying? Like
not the
America is
distances aren't that big.
big.
So miss me with the invading the whole Europe. We got a bunch of states, So
Yeah.
I guess my point is that what you see happening, I mean, is Russia gonna you mentioned it before, but I mean, is that essentially Russia's gonna Europe is gonna be the first strike outside of Ukraine?
Maybe the Russians have played a very clever game, and if it's going to be World War III, everybody's moving their pieces. Another thing to think about, and I'm sure we'll come back to it later in the broadcast. Iran has been making lots of statements about Operation True Promise 3. You know, they have sworn ever since Israel attacked them that they will retaliate. And I think this is one of the things that the Russians are kind of picking up from the Iranians is how to utilize, even though the Iranians say the era of strategic patience is over, right? No one is as patient as the Ukrainians. I mean, I'm sorry, the Iranians, right? Like Israel will hit them, and you'll see chatter all over the internet for a month every day. Oh, true promises today. Oh, and then baby goes and runs and hides in his bunker. I mean, this is a real effect, right? We didn't do nothing, but we just, you shut down presumably this government or put them on whatever. That's not nothing, right? That's just rumors. That's propaganda. Russia is getting better at that, right? But the Russian psyche is different from the Iranian psyche. I think when I listen to, this dude, man, that's one thing we get to look forward to with this new Trump administration is learning all of the characters that are in his cast, and I'm right there with you. I cannot remember this dude's name, but I swear this dude remind me of the old Britishy vampire on What We Do in the Shadows. And that's going to be his name for the next 4 years, man. The old boy. But yeah, it's
WWE ass country.
Man, it's like when you a fan, right? I'm gonna use an MMA metaphor because this is the only way I can explain his analysis. We're gonna come in and we're gonna give them, like you said, we're gonna give them more money and more weapons, and you can even believe. Well, first off, no such weapons exist, no such money exists. If they had it to give, they would get it. But if they had it to give, Israel would get it. So, you always the second mistress, baby, and that's the best it's gonna be. And if this Taiwan thing pop off, you gonna fall down even lower in the rankings. The fact of the matter is, Ukraine is all done. Right. And only the Americans can play these games. Right. There's a reason why the Americans let them use ATACMs. That's different from the French, allowing them to use the scalps, which, by the way, they have given permission. So we'll see what happens. But France is not nearly quite so strong as the United States. France has went to war historically with Russia several times. All of our fans of history, we understand exactly what happens when France goes to war with Russia. It's the same thing that happens.
It's not a rivalry if the other side doesn't win.
It's the same thing that happens when Germany goes to war with Russia. They both have the same record, a bunch of fucking O's. They historically have never been able to beat Russia, and this is just more of the same, right? America is a different match, but even America can be touched. And I think this goes back to, once again, the Russians are playing the same game as the Soviets. They go right up to the line to show what we can do, and then they do something to avoid the active phase, like just removing all pretense of rhetoric away from the conversation that we keep having. Has World War III begun? And I think if the Russians move, they'll do something clever. I don't think they have to hit Americans to retaliate for this, right? America is incredibly exposed in the Middle East right now. It can be as simple as, if you're giving, right, these weapons to our enemies, we'll give our weapons to your enemies, which they've explicitly stated. Now imagine how this entire scenario changes should there be a technology exchange and the Russians offer this not intercontinental, but interregional ballistic missile to the Iranians. Very simple, very, very simple language. Very simple how that changes the entire practice. Worse, what if the Iranians already have a native capability? Because they've continued to say, we have not used our best stuff yet. right? So these are the ways where a clever player could move around the board and still allow yourself a little bit of plausible deniability, which is what geopolitics is after all. Like you really try to do everything you can without directly implicating yourself. The only one that move like that is the United States. And just because they can doesn't mean they should. And just because they do doesn't mean they can, right? So think about that. Like people more and more are testing that. They wouldn't have. I mean, there's no way in the '80s the Yemeni irregulars would have took on Ronald
America was such
Reagan's
a
Navy.
boogeyman. Yeah, such a
Right?
such a boogeyman for so long, and it just kind of gets to the point where someone's saying like, "I don't care, I'm gonna take my shot," and I
Right?
think that like America doesn't want to show weakness, and they are weak right now. They look weak in a lot of ways, and
Right?
it goes back to the point of any of this, the Trump administration Dracula
Right?
guy, like he's saying, or the British guy, talking about
Yeah,
like,
and what we do in the shadows as
yeah,
vampire motherfucker.
yeah.
We
So
will have his name for you by the next broadcast, but it's not like y'all not gonna be
do
hearing
your
about this
own
dude.
research. Do your own
Man.
research. We can't provide everything.
But when he talks about it, right, it's like a casual fan in MMA. Like, well, why doesn't Conor McGregor just hit Habib with his super punch? He trying. He's really trying. He's trying. I promise you, Connor's not holding nothing back.
Well, I mean, yeah, and fuck Conor
And that's
McGregor,
the
that's a whole other
Ukrainians.
thing. But
No, I
essentially,
mean,
yeah. I mean,
that's
like I would say Pacific Rim is a better example. It's like, oh, we have a super sword. Well, you should have started with that. Like, if there's a super weapon, you start with it. And
yeah,
I
but they
think
don't have a
that's
super weapon. I mean,
and they
that's
don't
and that's
exist. There's
right,
not a
and
super
that's
weapon.
so when you got this new dude coming into the administration, he's been fed all of this propaganda, even more than the regular citizen, really. You think there's nothing America couldn't do. These kind of dudes, they think America could nuke the Mars if they wanted to. It's just a matter of will. Reality has nothing to do with it. You see what I'm saying? So, like, these guys, they don't even understand what the full capability of the United States is. And worse, they don't understand what the limits of that capability are. They don't understand these things. They think that all things are achievable by American might because that's what they have to tell themselves because the American military spending has been so high for so long. You don't want to believe it's all been smoke and mirrors. You can't believe that, even to yourself. That's the way that the stages of a con work. At the end of the day, cons are easy to pull because nobody wants to believe that they were suckered.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about you talked about Iran a little bit. Let's talk. I just want to just follow up a little bit with the ICC warrant for Bibi Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. I want to, there's been a lot of rhetoric out there, including Canada. And a few other European countries have mentioned this, like, yo, if he slides up in here, we have to follow the rule of law. We saw Justin Trudeau talk about
Wonderful
this.
trap.
And we have all of that, and then we have I could bring up Lindsey Graham. I could. He's a hilarious, ridiculous man. But I want to just read this because this is from the president, the current president, if wherever he is and whatever he's doing, the current president of the United States, Joe Biden. The ICC issuance of arrest warrants against Israeli leaders is outrageous. Let me be clear once again, whatever the ICC might apply, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. So it just seems
this
like
was on what, whitehouse.gov?
Yes.
So what that is guy comes up to him, here, Joe, please sign this. Do I think that Joe Biden has the cogence, the mental coherence?
But he does believe it, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what the statement is,
this is the Secretary of State. This Blinken wrote that. Blinken put that up. You know what I'm saying?
It's like the MMA manager tweeting for the MMA.
Right, Ali Abdulaziz has got the tweets, man.
I'm so sorry we use so many UFC and MMA references.
Hey, look, man,
I apologize,
get it.
but it is the thing that we know the best in terms.
Hey, look, liberals, I get it, man. Y'all, people that ain't liberal, we like to fight. We understand that there's a place for violence in this world, and violence has brought more freedom than any thoughts and prayers ever. The American Revolution was not a conversation. It was not a poetry slam. And people got together and violently expressed their ideas about what they would and would not take, right? And that's what it is. Like, so you need that. You need some type of outlet to understand that, any rate.
Yeah. So I think again, it's like one of those things where it's such a dangerous time to exist, and that's really why I don't want to be like there. We always are like, you guys are alarmist. Look, I get being alarmist is good for ratings. I do. I just don't. I don't think we can understate this anymore. We've been doing the best we can to understate it, and not. I feel like we've been trying not to be alarmists. Like again, an intermediary Merv hit Kyiv. There's more missiles going into Russia.
And Russia
right
said
now.
every time you use your weapons, we'll do this. We reserve the right to do this. And America did it 2 more times.
Yeah, and America and like America and the West are not the head, or I should say the at the foremost technology when it comes to missiles and missile defense. And it
they're
seems like
generations behind. They're generations behind.
And isn't this how the future of war is going to be fought, with missiles, missile defense, drones? I mean, obviously, of course, you'll need tanks and submarines, but this is what we are seeing in modern warfare.
You know what I think about? Again, I'm just all kinds of metaphors today. I think Americans, we take such pride in our Air Force, right? And a common thing that people joke about in America when they're talking about the Middle East, or like Iran, is like, what are they going to do? Fly F-14s up against our F-35s and our F-22s are stealth, and they're flying stuff from the 70s. I really feel like that's what the Russians feel like when Americans send them weak-ass missiles over. Like, wow, they got these Top Gun-ass, old-ass, because they're not making much of an impact on the battlefield. And you know who called this? General Lloyd. Austin Lloyd, for all of his flaws, Austin Lloyd straight up said, this will not significantly change the battle impact of what is happening with the footprint of the Ukrainian war. This will not change the strategic outcome of the Ukrainian war. And they outruled him. They countermanded him, all of Europe got together, and harassed the president. Harassed, I say, but they probably said, Lloyd won't let us do this. Will you say we could do it? And then, whoever talked to him last got him to say it. But we're in this dangerous place now because, again, Russia has essentially served as on Russia right now. We have no idea what they're going to do. I simply say, as a person that studies Russia, they're going to do something. They're going to, that's inevitable.
And Iran is reserving the right. Like, there's a lot of people out there right now reserving the right to pop off when they feel the time is right. And that's what I think, that's
you
like
just have
the
to be
thing.
prepared
It's
for it.
scary. Yeah, I mean, but like, how does a normal citizen prepare for it? You can't do nothing.
Because it never catches up with America. Sleep safe.
Right, until
I'm
now.
sure it'll all be fine.
I'm sure it'll all be fine. Yeah, I mean, great points. And I guess we can just kind of end it right here. Any further thoughts? I mean, like, there's obviously still a
No one
situation.
wins. No one wins in World War III. War is stupid. Although I do recognize the ability to utilize violence as a last defense to save your personal self. War between human beings with this level of technology and animosity, this level of dehumanization, it can only ever lead to genocide, mass death, and everything that's against what we stand for as progressives. And it's just a shame that we've been led down this path by people who claim to have progressive views. And this is strictly on, again, the voters that vote Democrat. Democrats voted for this guy who was supposed to be a safety valve to keep us safer from Trump, who wouldn't be crazy and unhinged. And we're looking at a guy who is on the way out. And instead of being a lame president, lame duck has decided, like we said, kick the table over and break everything to the point whereas no one could ever recover, and that not that Trump was going to have an amazing presidency, But now you're going to spend a good significant portion of this time just simply overcoming what I'm going to do for the last 3 months. Good luck. You know?
Yeah, 81 million people voted for this person, and that's on the American people for being so naive. And again, I mean, this is the backlash from the last election.
Voting has, what do they always say? Voting has consequences. Well, congratulations, liberals. Y'all voted for this dude, and we about to have World War III. We're having World War III.
It's definitely got World War III vibes, but we're still out here. We're gonna keep going until the big boy hits us. We're gonna keep rocking until then, and we want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners because we're on podcasts. We have a big podcast following, so I got to show love to everybody that's on a Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the good things. We also have a Patreon, which is growing. The community is growing. We got a little vibe in here, and I want to give a shout out to our patrons because without them, I mean, well, where would we be? And I want to give a shout out to Nikki Infield, Riggedy Pellegrino, Nat the Rat, Lucy Newman, Samantha Guerrero, Dumpy, Tom LeBeau, Turn Leftist, Dubsy22, Jay Goulart 94, No Ground Arcade, Paula LaPonderosa, Lissa Piercy, Lauren Bullock, Suzette Tav, and Dennis Amadeus. Y'all the real heroes. And just to go back to your point, Tanky, and you made a great one. Like, we got to be anti-war. I can't keep hearing people talk about Russia as either a boogeyman or here Putin is just a silly, weak, authoritarian. Like we gotta open.
But at the same time, he just a bluffer. He the boogeyman, but he the devil, but the devil just bluffing. He just playing.
Yeah, and we got to see that people are more complicated, that countries are more complicated than that. The world is people are vastly different from other people. Cultures are vastly different from other cultures. And if you believe yourself to be like an open-minded person, maybe you should open your mind to the idea that the United States is the bad guy. They're the ones that's pushing all of this. Not to say that there aren't other bad people and other bad things going on in the world, but I personally live in the United States. You live
as an American. My obligation is to make sure that America and American culture represents the values that I, as an American, attempt to espouse. Yeah. Progressivism, positivity, anti-war, anti-colonialism. Right? I worry about what we do because that's what we can have some impact on. I can't change what happens in Taiwan. I can, as an American, have a conversation about Hawaii. I can have a conversation about other protectorates, Guam, Puerto Rico.
Yeah, no, well said. For Mojolo Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.